Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this Infosec Edge Webcast. Learn how to hack and conduct a penetration test with Keatron Evans. My name is Jeff, and I'll be moderating the session today. We're excited to have Keatron back. He is Infosec's principal security researcher, bootcamp instructor, Infosec skills author, and cybersecurity superstar. We always love doing stuff with Keatron. He is a cybersecurity and workforce development expert with over 17 years of experience in penetration testing, incident response, information security management for federal agencies and Fortune 500 organizations. He's an established researcher and instructor, as well as lead author of the best-selling book, Chained Exploits, Advanced Hacking Attacks from Start to Finish. He regularly speaks at industry events like Black Hat, OWASP, ISACA, and RSA, and serves as a cybersecurity subject matter expert for major media outlets like CNN, Fox News, Information Security Magazine, and more. Thanks for joining us today, Keatron.
Thanks for having me back, Jeff. Always good times.
Just quick set the agenda before we jump in. We're going to kick it off with a live demo here to get us started, so that'll be fun. Everyone will get to see Keatron in action and learn penetration testing. Then after the demo, we're going to talk just what's new in ethical hacking, how it's changed, talk about some of the ethical hacking career opportunities, how to go ahead and get some of that hands-on experience you need. And then we'll talk a little bit about ethical hacking training options. And, like we said, at the end, we'll have that Q&A. But feel free to put in questions throughout the session today. Before we get started, we do have that tab for related content where you can get all these free resources. We have our Infosec Skills course catalog, Cyber Range Flyer, where you can do some of this ethical hacking stuff Keatron's going to show us. We also have our Infosec resources website. You can see that linked or an image of that here with a lot of articles on penetration testing and hacking if you're interested in just reading blogs or going through capture the flags, things like that. And then Keatron also has 4 Infosec Skills Learning Paths. I'm going to go ahead and throw this poll here up on the screen. It's always good just to get a sense of the people on the call's background. And while we give everyone 60 seconds to answer, if you want to maybe give everyone a little overview of those 4 learning paths that you have, Keatron?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. The first one, and one of the ones that always gets a lot of attention, is the Cybersecurity Foundation. So that course was basically engineered for the person that has literally no background whatsoever in cybersecurity, and they're trying to get into it, even if you don't have a lot of background in anything technical, like you don't have an IT background. So I put that course together specifically for that, and it's turned out to be, one of the more popular courses that I have out there. And then right after that, there is the incident response course. One of the things that I'm known for in the industry is incident response and leading responses to some very well-known data breaches. And I figured I'd put together a course to kind of teach people how to do that effectively. So that's one of the courses that I enjoyed putting together as well. And then, of course, the Certified Ethical Hacker, which is probably, pen testing is probably what I'm most well known for. That course is, I would say, my proudest work to date. We just released that today, actually. That just went live today. And we put a lot of resources and time and effort into it. I'm just really, really proud of the work that everybody put into it, especially Infosec and the production company that we use to do a lot of the work on the back end. And then we have the CompTIA Pen Test course that's going to be up very shortly. We've got that all recorded and it's ready to go. We just need to do some logistics with it to get it up properly. But those are the courses that I have in the Infosec Skills path now. And I definitely think everybody should take a look at them.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and check out the results here. Interesting. Looks like a lot of people on the call have certifications here. I don't know if there's anything you want to comment on here about these certifications before we go ahead and dive into the penetration testing demo.
Not really. I'm just glad to see that there's a nice mixture across the board. A lot of people with management certifications or cybersecurity management certifications, as well as some more technical certifications like PenTest Plus and CEH.
All right, now I think probably the most exciting part everyone's waiting for is to see you in action. So if you want to go ahead and share your screen and we can dive into this penetration testing demo. Like I said, if anyone has questions, feel free to drop them in throughout. We'll try to, if they're relevant to what Keatron's doing, I'll try to get them to him right away. Otherwise, we'll save them for the end.
Absolutely. All right. So can you see Google, Jeff, on my screen?
Yeah, I can see it. And for everyone else on the call, you should be able to arrange the widgets to expand the media
All
player
right.
if you need to see what Keatron's doing.
So one of the things that you have to remember about pen testing, and I think people forget about this part because they want to jump straight to the hacking. There's quite a bit of research, and we call this reconnaissance, that you do before you break into a target. And consequently, it's the same process that a malicious threat actor would go through if they were trying to break into your organization. They wouldn't just pick you out of a box and just start throwing things at you. They would do reconnaissance and research about you. And then based on what they find, they would start trying to break in. So I want to just show just a couple of minutes of that before we get into scanning and stuff like that. So in this particular case, what I did was pull just a very pretty well-known webcam or security camera, Google hack here, where if you do this query, it shows you unprotected webcams of the brand of this particular brand called Axis. So what you can do is if you click on these, and we could just even take airport off, for example. If you click on these, what you're seeing is actually real live webcam feeds there that's showing up. So you can see what that web camera sees. And what's scary about that is Axis is one of the brands that a lot of organizations use as kind of like security cameras. They've replaced like the closed circuit TV with this brand. And you can see a lot of times, behind secure facilities, places where you definitely shouldn't be able to see. For those that are, there's one in here that I like to show, Buffalo Trace. Yeah, for those of you that are into any type of, scotch or anything or liquor or anything like that, Buffalo Trace has one that you can watch the factory. And I think it was initially put up for managers and supervisors to, because if you imagine, I mean, this is like somewhere in, where a pretty isolated place, they probably have some concerns of people like taking bottles and things like that out, or maybe they do, who knows. But the problem is we can actually control this camera, right? So for example, if I wanted to, make it pan left, for example, I could come up here and actually hit the pan left and it would pan left. Now what's happening is somebody else is controlling it currently. So I'm kind of like fighting for control, but eventually I'll be able to take it, and kind of make it go to where I want it to go to, as I win the fight with this person that's controlling it now. So these are some of the things that we do in the beginning of a pen test. Another thing I want to show you is a Google hacking database. And that is even a little more devastating because a lot of the stuff that you think about you having to hack to get, you don't necessarily have to if it's available out there. So what I'm going to do is show you how we can find information. Let's just, for example, see if we can find some good passwords that are out here in the public. So looking at this Google hack here, and basically these are just thousands of queries that other hackers and pen testers have put out here on how to do a Google query for a specific thing that you may be interested in. So there's like thousands of pages of queries here specifically aimed at finding passwords that shouldn't be out there. And let's look for something interesting here. All right, let's look at this one, this Yahoo site admin, because a lot of websites are still built using these site builders and these automated things like that. Well, what we have here is it shows us like, look, if you want to go out to Google and find people who built their websites with Yahoo site admin and didn't realize that by doing that, you're automatically storing your credentials in a file that's publicly reachable, you can just do this Google query. So we click it, it goes out to Google, does that query for us. And now we can actually see real websites here that are unprotected. And what I mean by that is without logging in or anything like that, we can go to the link, click on this db.conf file, and what I'm showing you here, all right, this username, that's an actual real username. This password, that's an actual password right here. And notice we got that information without logging in. We didn't have to do any hacking. It's just out there. So a big part of pen testing and hacking is just knowing how to look for information. And this passive stuff that I'm showing you here out on Google is a very, very important part of that. All right. So now let's move on to what would happen. You know, once we found all we could find out in the public, now we have to start doing what we call active scanning and active reconnaissance to try to go directly at a target. So in this case, if I were to use, I grew up about 20 miles from Mississippi State, so they don't mind me using them as a kind of a slight example here. So if we do a whois, and this is just using a tool that you'll learn about in the courses that we teach and things like that, it goes out and gets public DNS information about any domain or any target organization that you put in. We can see that it gives us some registration information. It gives us some people. And these two people that are listed here, I might even use them as, they might become social engineering targets, or I might use them to social engineer other people, right? I might use their email and these things to pretend to be somebody else to phish actual targets in the organization. But what ends up happening is we use that information for whatever. We might use other tools that are more passive or on the outside, like DNS Recon, to collect information about the domain like this. And this is going to be some very useful information. Let's do this. So I'm going for a range here, through whois and through some of the others. I found that Mississippi State owns this IP address range, right? And you could do that just by doing dig or pinging their website, and you would get one of these IPs back. But it appears that they own this entire network range just based on the fact that, all of these devices end with msstate.edu. So we can clearly see that there. That would make me think they probably own it. But one important part, going back to, it's not just about hacking and knowing how to use pen test tools. You do have to master the foundations of the operating system, because what you'd want to do with this data is write it to a file. We'll just call this demo test. Test it, if that works. You would write this information to a file locally so that you have it and you can parse it without having to constantly go back out to the internet to get it. Now, in this file, we can see that we've got that data. And one important part of being a pen tester is being able to take a lot of information that you get back from tools, parse that information down, clean it up, and use it in a way or do something with it that's useful. So for example, this is kind of a mess. I want to clean it up and extract out just the fully qualified domain name here in the IP address. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, let's put it in Excel and put a pivot table in there. Nope, we're going to do it right from the command line. So if I grep for the string PTR, let me show you where I got that. Seems like that is part of the data part of the file. So if I want just the data, it seems I can grab any line that's got that in it and get rid of all this other garbage at the top and the bottom. So if I try that, that cleans it up right away. But remember, all we want is just these two fields. So I'll take that result, pipe it out even further, and then I'll send that output to awk. And these lines here, for those of you who don't know, these are just, we call those pipes. So you're taking the output from this command and sending it to this command. Now we're taking the output from this command and sending it to awk. And I'm going to tell awk to print for me. Let's see, I want to do field, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's do fields 3 and 4. That's field 1, that's field 2, that's field 3, and that's field 4. So this is all this Linux command line, right? So I'm going to tell awk to print for me field 3 and field 4. And what I end up with is like a nice little collection of just the fully qualified domain name and IP address. So now that I see on the screen that it looks right, I'll write committed to the file. So now we got that data there. So as a pen tester, now you can parse through that, look for things that's important. For example, this is a university. So some things that might be important to look for would be like student, teacher, faculty. And sure enough, we get some interesting hits there. Now, you can all look at this, and I think you would all agree that as a hacker, if you're malicious or a pen tester, these two devices right here would definitely go in your box of, these are interesting targets that I'm going to come back and spend a lot more time looking at later, because it clearly says faculty credentials there. All right. Now, what ends up happening
Keatron, we have a question. Someone's
Sure.
wondering what tool it is that you're using right now on the screen, just so they know what it is you're using if they wanted to follow along in the future.
I'm just using Linux command line.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, it's just Linux commands. So there's no specific tool. The tool that I used to get this data was actually DNS Recon, but now I'm parsing data with just Linux command line. And keep in mind here, I'm not going at a pace to try to have you do this with me here. I'm just getting the information out. So if you want to try to do it with me, you probably want to get the recording when that's available and go back and pause it, because there's definitely not enough time for me to go at a really a instructional teaching pace, more just an information pace here that I'm going at. All right, so now that we got this information, you would then, actually start to scan your targets. And what I'm going to do is pretend like this machine right here is one of the IPs that we got back in that traffic, right? 182 there. So now I would become more active, and I would scan that machine. With nmap here. And nmap is going to basically tell me what services are exposed or what ports are open, all right, on that device. You would then, as a pen tester, methodically go through each one of these ports and try to enumerate specifically what this reachable service is. Now, in this case, I'm going to kind of fast forward here and we'll jump to this port. But, understand that in real life, you would need to check all these, because as a pen tester, that's what you'd be getting paid to do. As a malicious hacker, you're just not checking everything if you don't do that, right? So if we go to port 8081, I'm going to specifically tell nmap to scan just that port now. And we're going to add another flag. And these are these flags and what they do. These are all the things that you learn, if you take the course. This flag is a version probe scan. So what this is saying up here is we think that that's what's running there because that's what typically runs on that port. We can't ever trust that as a pen tester or a hacker, so we have to say we need to validate. So by adding the SV flag, we're validating what's there by probing that service and interacting with it. And what we get back is it's actually running this, which is completely different than what it guessed in the beginning. And this is an important lesson because you can't always trust what you see in your first scan. You have to dig deeper, interrogate the services and things like that, so that when we get to the point of attacking, we're actually sure that we're attacking the right thing. Otherwise, you might blow something up or shut something down. And for a pen tester, that's bad because you may be costing your customer money. For a black hat hacker, that may be bad because now you've kind of revealed the fact that you're there, which takes away your stealth features. So now that we know the service is here, let me show you how quickly we go from, hey, we found a service, to being able to exploit it. I'm literally going to copy this right out of the nmap output, go out to the internet, just go back to Google. And in Google, I'm simply going to search for vulnerabilities related to that service that I copied and pasted. And we quickly see there is a vulnerability from November of last year that seems to be highly rated. It does allow remote code execution or remote command execution. In short, what that means is this vulnerability is so bad that if I'm able to exploit it, it will allow me to take control of and execute commands on whatever machine it is that we're running this against. So it looks promising, but we need to validate it. It's related to the Rigetto service. So I need to go back to my Kali instance here and just see if there's any exploits related to Rigetto built in. If not, I may have to go out to the internet and download that exploit and make it into something that I can use. But fortunately for me, there appears to be quite a few exploits related to it in Kali. There's even one in the famous tool Metasploit there. So I'm going to opt to use Metasploit because we use that a lot in the courses. I'll start Metasploit up, and then once Metasploit is running, I'm going to look for that specific vulnerability and exploit that we just discovered there. Right? So I search for it. It says, yep, here it is. Now I go ahead and load that exploit. And you will see people using this exploit a lot to demonstrate exploitation because it's a very solid one and it's very predictable as far as how it works. So I want you to think of the exploit here as a missile that I'm shooting at a target. And as you know, with the missile, you have to have a payload in the missile because the missile has to do something. Once it hits the target, do you want it to explode that target? Do you want it to disable electronics in that target? Do you want it to spit out some chemical that causes people to gag? Like, what do you want that missile to do for you once it pierces that target? And in this case, in the form of Metasploit, the payload, the missile is here, it's the exploit, and the payload is what we put inside the missile. And what we're putting inside is something called a reverse interpreter session, which we're saying we want this missile to go hit the target, and then once it's there, execute this code that phones home back to us and sends us over that connection a command shell that will allow us to control that machine. That's what we're telling it to do. But in order for it to do that, we have to tell it how to get back to us or what our return address is. And in Metasploit, that's called lhost, which my IP address escapes me right now, is 186. So we have to tell it to come back to us because everything we put here is going into this payload. So we're saying we want this type of payload, and now we're giving it the specific things to put in that payload, right? Now we have to tell Metasploit who our target is. In other words, that's who we're going after. And then we have to tell it what port that service that we're trying to exploit is running on. Now, it's important to note, as a pen tester, what you're doing right here is you're just validating whether or not the vulnerability exists. Because you might run a scan and see a software and it might look like it's vulnerable, but maybe on the back end they've done some patching or they've done something to it to make it not exploitable. But as a pen tester, that's your job, is to check to see if it's indeed exploitable. As a hacker, you have to check because you can't assume that, you know, everything's patched. If you look at what's happened in the industry, if you take the 5 most critical data breaches and ransomware attacks from 2021 so far, the thing they all have in common is they were all relatively low-hanging fruit types of exploits. There was no groundbreaking way that these people got into these organizations. They were all things that were patchable. They were all things that should have been fixed before the attackers got to it. So as a pen tester, you can't assume that an organization, no matter who the organization is protected from all these things, because you're likely to, to find that you're disappointing yourself. So we go ahead and launch our missile, or we launch the exploit, and right away we see we've got success there because it says a session is open, which means we are now actually connected to that machine. To prove that, we can drop into a command shell. We can run ipconfig. And we can see that we are indeed sitting on the command line of that victim machine right there. If you go over to the actual victim, you can see that this is it. And now we essentially have the ability to give ourselves some control over that machine. If we look at who we're currently running as, very basic permissions here, it's just a local user. One of the first things that you normally do is try to elevate your privileges. So I will do that by finding or attempting to find a process that's running with elevated privileges. And in the world of Windows, as a lot of you know, the highest possible privilege you can have in Windows is not admin, not domain admin, not any type of system admin. The highest privilege you can have in Windows is system. So we want to get to that privilege level, right? And there's always a lot of processes in Windows that runs a system. So if you can migrate to or inherit or take over the memory space of any of those programs, you will then inherit their permission. And a good target is always system, which always runs as PID 4. And in this case, services, which runs as PID 572. So I'll try the easy way first. I'll try migrating into 572. And that didn't work because we have to now do something called privilege escalation to put ourselves in a position to be able to migrate into that process. But we can also try the easy route here. And this is its own little privilege escalation routine where it's automating what I just described, where it's doing privilege escalation. So we do that, it says it got system. So now if I drop back into my command shell and I say, who am I? We've now elevated ourselves successfully to the highest possible privilege you can ever have in Windows. As a matter of fact, no domain admin, domain administrator, system administrator can ever have this privilege level by logging in, because you can't log in as system. You can only inherit that privilege by injecting into the memory space of something that's running as that privilege, because essentially it's reserved for the Windows kernel. And we've tricked it into giving us that privilege level. So we could do things like create a Jeff Rocks account here, because we're going to frame Jeff for all the hacks. That way, if the police come, we can point him out. And not only that, this is a domain controller, so we can actually, and if it weren't, we can just add him to the local administrators group, but we could actually try to add Jeff to the domain admins group, which means he has, as much power as the domain admins at this point. So let's do Jeff Rocks and say add. And sure enough, because we're system, Windows is not going to complain about that. Now, the last part of this, because we could move horizontally now and things like that, which is all part of the pen testing process. But due to trying to make sure we fit within the right time frame, what I'm going to do next is, move to the next phase, which would be covering your tracks or trying to make it not easy to identify that you were there and specifically what you did. And I want to just show you give you like a little dose of that. And keep in mind, what we're doing here is we're showing you in 20 minutes, what we do over a 5-day period. So while it may seem like I'm going fast and these things are really, really deep and over your head for some of you, trust me, give me 5 days with you and it'll seem like it won't be that tough for you. You'll be able to figure it out. So what's happening now is I'm going to the victim and I want to show you in the event viewer where there's events that people can investigate. When we do forensics and incident response, the Windows event logs are key places that we look for evidence of things happening. And you can see that these logs have stuff in there. For example, the security log is full, the system log is relatively full, and the application log has a bunch of stuff in there as well. But watch this. So notice they're full now. I'm going to go over it as the attacker. I'm going to run the command clear EV in Meterpreter. And look at what it tells us it just did. It says it wiped those logs. All right. Even though I have a policy configured on that machine that says you can't erase logs without copying them off somewhere else first, it's still gone ahead and do it because it's running as system. So if we go over now and refresh these logs, look at the security one. It's relatively empty now. system is empty except for the fact that the logs were cleared, application is empty. So when you go look at these logs, all you're going to see is we must have been hacked because the logs are cleared. And to be fair here, what I'm trying to show you is when it comes to covering tracks, there's generally two avenues you go down. One is anti-incident response, which means you just want to get rid of any evidence that you were there, but leave everything else intact so they don't even know you're there. But what we're looking at here is anti-forensics. So I'm assuming that the victim is going to know that I was there because maybe I'm going to sell their data on the internet or something. So when they come looking, all they're going to see is the logs were cleared. And this might seem like a smoking gun because you might say, well, the fact that there's an event that says the logs were cleared tells me something, but what does it tell you? It actually tells you nothing, right? Because what's upper management going to want to know? How did they get in? What did they do when they got in? What did they take? What's the root cause? And we've just taken away the ability for you to know any of that by clearing all the logs that would have shown how we got to this point. So it's all about what the objective is from the attacker standpoint. They're not always trying to keep you from knowing they were there, especially if they're going to eventually do something that's going to make it clear that they were there. And the covering your tracks phase is generally the last phase. Now, if this were a pen test, in the beginning, we would have a whole phase of pre-engagement activities like signing contracts, setting up a statement of work, creating a get out of jail free card. There's a whole bunch of legal stuff that goes in the front. So before you lift a finger to do any scan, you make sure all that legal stuff is set up. Make sure you've got a signed contract. A verbal contract doesn't count. You need to have a signed contract. And then towards the end, there's other stuff that we do after covering your tracks that's post engagement stuff, like, writing a report, making sure that the report is what they want and all these things. And that is what a pen test would look like. And we just tested one system and only one service on that system. And you have to think about it. Every system has a potential 65,535 ports that you would need to scan and check for services, and then check those services for vulnerabilities for each system. Some of my clients have over 200,000 systems. So as you can imagine, the pen test can get very big and become very expensive. And I have a few clients that have, less than 1,000 systems. Those pen tests don't cost as much. But the reason we use automated tools, everything I showed you here was manual, but we do purchase and use automated tools because of the scale. But make no mistake about it, if you don't understand how to do this stuff manually, like I just showed you, those big automated tools are going to be relatively useless to you. You're not going to be able to do anything with them that anyone couldn't pull it down, push run, and spit out a report for it. But if you really want to excel at pen testing and other areas, you need to dig in, learn how to do these manual exercises like this, because it sharpens your technical aptitude muscle to prepare you to do this and do a whole bunch of other things. I tell people all the time, I started as a pen tester, but I've grown a incident response practice, a threat hunting practice, all from this basic skill set. Everything that I just showed you here translates nicely to incident response, to forensics, to cyber threat hunting, and to cybersecurity engineering. So pen testing is a great place to start. And a lot of us that you see in the media and in the industry doing all these other big things, a lot of us started right here with pen testing. And we've got a perfect way to kind of get you up to speed on that. So I think I'll end the demo there, Jeff, in an effort to make sure we don't use up too much time on it. Let me stop the share.
Sure. Yeah, we do have a few questions that came in. There's a couple about just the technology and about Linux in general. One person's asking if you have a Linux distribution that you prefer working with.
Yes. Especially for teaching and making it easier for people to transition in, Kali is a good source to use. Now, to be clear, Kali is actually just Debian, right? So it's Debian Linux that's been heavily customized. So Kali is running on top of Debian. It's just a customized version of Debian. So I think Kali is a good one to start with, and that's exactly what I was using with everything that I just did there. I specifically didn't go out of Kali to show you that you can do everything within that one tool. And there's no customizations. I didn't install any tool that you just saw me use. It all comes with Kali when you download it.
Yeah, and then we have another question from Orlando. He's wondering about installing Kali Linux in an IT/OT environment. Is there any restrictions or issues that come up with installing it in certain places?
Not really. It depends on the organization. They may not have Kali authorized in that environment. So a lot of really high secure environments, especially classified environments, you have to have accredited tools that can be used in there. And for those environments, what we actually do, Orlando, is we use our own Linux distributions that are approved to be in that environment. And then we build the tools that we need inside that environment. So in other words, instead of bringing something in that's got everything in it, we just build it once we get into the environment.
Yeah, and then we have several questions about clearing the logs that you showed at the end of the demo there. 1 second here, let me find them. Got a lot of questions coming in, so yeah, that's good. So yeah, Cynthia asked, would you want to look for any log aggregators running before you remove the logs, just in case? And similarly, someone else asked, can those cleared logs be found on the central log server, like a seam?
Yeah, I mean, that's starting to get into more architecture questions. And to be honest with you, like, we do recommend for customers that if they have a log, they should have SIMs and things like that are correlating these logs. And if you can't, afford to have your own log aggregator, you should probably be using a managed security service provider that's taking all these logs, making a mirror copy of them offline in real time in another location, and you're able to access those through a portal. So even if I get to a system like this and I delete the logs, I didn't delete them from everywhere, right? So you have somewhere that you can go look for it. That can be cost prohibitive for some organizations if they don't have a big enough budget, but that's definitely something that we recommend as far as how to make sure your logs are solid. And then what was the other question after the log aggregation?
Yeah, if those cleared logs could be found on a central log server, is the related question.
Yeah, I mean, that it depends on the architecture, right? Like, that's a very kind of generic question, because when you say central log server, that could mean a lot of different things. And not every organization has that. Not every organization has that for every device in the environment. A lot of times what you see is some of the critical devices might have a central place that the logs go, but every individual workstation and every server in that environment may not be part of that central log repository that these logs are going to. So that's a very, very much depends on the architecture of how they set up their logging and that type of thing.
All right, let's move on to the next slide. I know we have a lot of questions coming in, but want to make sure we have time to get through these couple other slides that we wanted to touch on. So this is the MITRE attack, enterprise matrix. I know with our Infosec skills platform, a lot of our cyber ranges, we map to these specific techniques and tactics. I don't know if you want to say anything specifically about your demo and how it relates to these steps.
Yeah, so what I'll say about that is every single thing that I just did can be mapped directly to this MITRE attack framework. As a matter of fact, what we might do post is when we edit this recording is we might go and like have something pop up on the screen to say this can be mapped to MITRE, technique 7, here, this particular MITRE attack framework thing. I think that might be useful. But yeah, everything that I did maps directly to the MITRE attack framework here.
All right, let's take a few minutes then and talk about ethical hacking, what's new, and careers, and then we'll get to the rest of your questions. So
sure.
I'm always curious when we do these webinars pretty frequently. So it's always interesting to see how the landscape is changing and what's new in ethical hacking or pen testing or cybersecurity in general. So yeah, I'll throw it over to you. And is there anything specific that's changing or evolving that people should be aware of?
For sure. So definitely emphasis on cloud pen testing. My company's done about 17 large pen tests this year in 2021, and every single one of them had a cloud component to it, every single one. And that's the first time that's happened over a year to where everyone had cloud to it. And not only that, most of them had more than 50% cloud involvement with it, right? So that's a trend that's happening. So you definitely want to make sure that you're you're properly marrying your understanding and mastery of cloud technologies to your building up your pen test skills. The other thing is the focus on segmentation testing. The reason I bring that up is because, so I've always done a lot of segmentation testing, primarily for companies that we pen test in the financial sector of the industry. And that's because if you are a company, for example, and you take credit cards as a form of payment, you're required to do segmentation testing at least once a year, which means we have to go into the environment, identify where credit card data lives, and make sure that you're properly segmenting the rest of the network from where that credit card data lives. And most companies, that credit card data is in like islands all over the place. So you have to segment test all of those islands and make sure nothing can get in or out that's not supposed to. But the reason that's becoming more and more popular now, and I'm getting asked to do that for customers that aren't companies that are under PCI and have to worry about the credit card things, is the new focus on zero trust, right? So in order for you to say zero trust in an internal environment or a big environment with many micro internal environments, it's hard to say zero trust if you don't even know where your segmentation is or where things are that you should or should not be trusting. So I'm seeing an uptick in organizations asking us to help them find out where those segmentation points are so that they can start to actually build a zero trust framework around those different micro environments in their big environment. And then third, containers and APIs. This kind of ties to cloud a little bit, but definitely a lot of the things that we're testing now are not real servers or not even virtual machines. They're micro machines, containers. We're testing a lot of APIs versus testing actual, full-fledged applications now. I've done quite a bit of stuff this year with, Lambda objects and Lambda functions, how that triggers things and makes things happen. And a lot of times the website that you're testing doesn't even exist until, for example, an API triggers some function and makes that website exist. And it might exist different for me than it would for you, Jeff, because the API has decided that you need to see the website a certain way. So all of those complex mechanics and architectures that are happening with cloud and containers and APIs, we're seeing a lot of where we're having to test the security of that stuff. And that's something else that if you're coming into the industry or if you're already in it and you're trying to beef up your skills, you want to focus on that.
Yeah, and in your opinion, is that making penetration testing more difficult or more complex, or does it take longer because of these different things, or is it pretty similar to how it was 5 years ago in terms of
I wouldn't say it's making it harder. I just think it makes it to where there are more things that you have to consider. But, in exchange for that, there are other things like when you migrate to cloud, there are other things that you don't have to consider anymore because you don't have visibility into it. It becomes the operational, at least, responsibility of the cloud service provider, such as the physical layer. Like you don't even have to consider that at all. You get an attestation or a SOC 2 report from that cloud service provider, and you're done with the physical testing. And that, for a lot of our clients, that's a big part of it. When they had all their data sitting in their own data center or sitting on premise. So yes, there are some new complexities and some new things that you have to consider, but you're also moving away from some things that you have to spend a lot of time on as well. So I really think it kind of balances out quite nicely.
All right, I see we have a lot of career-related questions coming in, so I think that'd be good to follow up with after we talk about. Yeah. But yeah, I'll let you go first. Maybe talk about the different paths that you see, and then we'll follow up with some specific questions.
Yeah, certainly. So, the thing that I always try to stress to people that are coming in is getting these skills. Pen testing is considered to be more of an offensive skill set that would put you on an offensive team. But the skills that you learn can also help you to be a better defender or a better blue teamer, because you know what the thought process of an attacker is. You know what an attack looks like. You can see those gaps. If you're the one blue teamer that's got a lot of offensive operational experience, you're that blue teamer that's seeing those gaps that the other blue teamers just can't see, because their mind is not thinking about it from the perspective of how somebody would break in. So pen testing is one of those things that I think can put you in a better position in either side, the blue or the red side. But definitely when you look at, red teaming and doing pen testing, and even to some extent, cyber threat hunting, these are more offensive type of skills because you're hunting, if you're doing threat hunting, you're hunting offensive operators. But the blue team side, like I said, doing security engineering, doing cybersecurity engineering and those types of things on the blue side to try to keep the red side or the bad guys out, I think is just as important, maybe more important, depending on how you look at it. But these two skill sets complement each other, as opposed to they're two separate things that you should really, if you're only doing blue team, you should only do blue team stuff. I encourage organizations that I work with on workforce development all the time, you need to let your blue teamers do red team exercises on a relatively regular basis, as much as you can afford, so that they become better blue teamers. And you definitely need to let your offensive and pen testing teams do blue team stuff so they can become better offensive operators. The more you know about the defense, the better of an offensive operator you are, and it works the other way around.
Yeah, we'll get to some of the career questions now. We have a couple beginner ones. Charles is asking, he says that he's new to pen testing and was wondering how long it would take to learn all these unfamiliar commands. Yeah, I think a little people knew they get a little overwhelmed, I think, by all the command line stuff and things that you're typing. Any advice there? For sure. And that's a good question. And I encourage, I'm glad I got that question, because the thing is when I started in pen testing, I felt exactly the same way. I would see, people like Jack, because, I would see people doing these things, and it was just so many different commands going at such a high speed that I didn't understand what was going on. And it seemed overwhelming to me as far as how am I ever going to learn all these commands? But number one, it really isn't about that. It's really about slowing it down and mastering the things that I said. First, you have to know the operating systems. You have to know how networks work. And as you start practicing those things, the commands and recalling the commands becomes second nature. I'll give you this example. The first time I ever touched a computer and I had to go file open to open a document, in WordPerfect or Microsoft Word or whatever it was I was using, that was a big learning step, to be able to just go file and go open and go get a file. Well, as you do that over and over again for different programs, the concept of in a new program going to file open becomes automatic. You can jump into an application you've never seen before, but if you see that file drop down, you instinctively go click that and get it to drop down so you can see what's in that drop down. These commands that you see me going through and it's looking like magic, it works the same way. Once you learn how to do certain commands, how to use tab completion and all these things, that becomes an automatic muscle that happens for you when you're on a command line. You just instinctively know how to look for help. You instinctively know how to find out what a command does. So don't be overwhelmed by that. That's something that's teachable. And to be honest with you, I spend a lot of time in that cybersecurity foundations course specifically going over that. We spend an hour on Windows command line. Like, if you've never touched the Windows command line before, let's do something. Let's go to your desktop, drag and drop a file, or right click and copy and paste a file from your desktop to the downloads folder. Great, everybody can do that. Now let's do that same operation just using the command line. And that's how I introduce you into getting solid, not even just getting solid, getting nice on the Windows command line and on the Linux command line, so that when you're following through these exercises like this, that part's not overwhelming to you. You just need to slow it down long enough to see what the command is, and then you got it. And that's how you put yourself in a position to where you can grow at a more rapid rate and not be overwhelmed by it. Yeah, you were talking about your cybersecurity foundations courses, which are obviously a great way for newbies to break in. We have a related question. Jose is asking, he's been told to follow the CompTIA pathway. If you have zero experience, A+, Network+, Cyber or Security+. And that's been, a pretty proven method for us as well. We, Vets&Tech we partner with, and they do that pathway. But yeah, curious your thoughts. Is that when someone comes to you and says they have no experience, do you recommend they follow like that CompTIA career pathway or other pathways or other courses you have? Any advice there?
I definitely think CompTIA is one of the more mature, and they have a more holistic and complete program to cater to that. But what I would add to that is definitely do the Cybersecurity Foundations course first. The reason I created it as the missing manual, for people trying to get in, because everything assumes even with the CompTIA stuff, and again, it's the best out there for that. You go into it and you take these courses, and it starts off assuming that you know certain things that most people that don't have any IT background just don't know. You get in there, the first 20 minutes sounds good, and then instantly that you hear words like packets, and you hear words, like TCP, and you hear words like route table and router and switch, and these things, all of a sudden, you're getting this alphabet soup and all these different words that you've never heard before, and then you're lost. You're suddenly lost. So I think that is still the recommended way, and it's still the best thing out there. But just add the cybersecurity foundations in front of that. You need that foundational stuff to even, I've seen people in Security Plus classes before that wasn't sure about the difference between the web browser and their operating system. If you ask what's your operating system, they might say Chrome or Internet Explorer or Firefox, right? So we need to get people past that point, get the foundational stuff, be comfortable on the command line. And then when you go into, a Security Plus or Network Plus or an A Plus, it is a nice transition to where you can kind of flow with it versus being overwhelmed on the first day. So yeah, I definitely think that's still the right path. Just insert the little 5 hours prep work. I'm not saying change that path. I'm saying put in front of that path this preparation, which is the foundations course, and that will, I promise, it'll make you more solid. And I've even had people that have already went down the entire CompTIA track, which we do recommend as well, to then take my cybersecurity foundations course later and come back and say, I definitely needed to have done that first. It would have made all the difference, but it's actually helped me as well, even though I'm pretty far along in my career path. So I would think that would be the only thing I would change on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a number of other questions about, best way to learn pen testing and hacking. And so I wanted to move along to this slide here. I know you've put a lot of work with the Infosec Skills platform to develop some of these hands-on labs and cyber ranges that you can see here on the screen. So yeah, if you want to just maybe talk a little bit about how to go about getting that experience and what it's like in Infosec Skills there.
For sure. So one of the things that I think makes the Skills platform and our cyber ranges so powerful is the fact that you can transition from one to the other kind of seamlessly. For example, if you're watching like a Network Plus or PenTest Plus or CEH course, watching me go through and do demonstrations, you can pause that video and jump right into the cyber range and recreate what you just saw me do in that demonstration. And I think that's powerful because that's how we learn. What we've learned over the years is that's how we learn. You can't just put us in a cyber range and have us just be there and just bang stuff out forever. Or you can't just put us in front of a bunch of videos of someone talking and demonstrating stuff. We learn better when we have a combination of that, and we get to pick the rate at which we spend time in one or the other. But we definitely have learned better with having both of them in there.
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes left, so I wanted to spend just a minute talking a little bit more about Infosec Skills, and then we need to pick our winner, and then if we have time, we'll do another question or two. But yeah, this is Infosec Skills, which Keatron was talking about, is his learning path in there with all his courses, all of those cyber ranges. So yeah, encourage everyone to go and check that out. You can create a free trial, go ahead and explore all the courses, and then if you like, you can pay. It's just $34 a month right now, so pretty good value. We do have some other people wondering about like live boot camps and live training, and I think that's the one thing we didn't really talk about yet. I know, for example, our ethical hacking boot camp has trains you for 2 certifications, the CEH and the PenTest Plus. And what students really love about that is you get a great instructor like Keatron, for a full week. But then we also have our exam pass guarantee. So essentially, if you fail your CEH exam on your first attempt, we'll pay for another attempt, because we stand by our instructors like Keatron and the training they provide. But yeah, is there anything you wanted to say about the live bootcamp experience?
Yeah, so I do a lot of these, and the way it works is we're all in a Zoom meeting. We all have labs. We all have things that we're working on, and you've got me one-on-one as an instructor, kind of like how you and I are communicating now. I can see your screen, I can see your lab. I can walk you through things. I can help you individually as you're going through these exercises. People ask questions, so it's the same as if we were physically with each other in a hotel conference room or something, teaching a big class like that. This is the same, but there are some advantages you get. For example, when you do the live online boot camps with me live, all that stuff is recorded. And as a student, you get access to those recordings. So not only do you get me live and in person, but you get to go back and have unlimited access to the recordings of that. So where you can go back and rewatch a demo or a lecture, or somebody asked a question that you didn't know you needed the answer to as well. You can go back and watch that in the video. So I think those are some huge advantages that you get for doing the live online. That's just not available with the in person, like if we were physically face to face with each other.
All right, now let's go ahead and pick our winner for a 1-year subscription to InfoSec Skills. And the winner today is Sebastian G from Sun International. So Camille will be following up with an email with a code for you to go ahead and get your free year of InfoSec Skills. Yeah, be curious if you take any of Keatron's courses. If you enjoy them, yeah, feel free to hit him up on LinkedIn or drop him a message. So I'm sure he's always looking for feedback. Yeah, and we have just a minute or two. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I see a lot of people asking words of cybersecurity foundations course. Once you sign up for skills, just search for cybersecurity foundations, and it's the only one that's in there.
Yep, yeah, and there's actually a blog we wrote about it, so I'll see if I can find that. Well, we might not have time to share that actually, but yeah, if you once you get into skills, you can search for all those different courses. So yeah, we have a lot of questions about like which certifications to get, CEH, Pentest Plus, OSCP. Obviously, you teach the CEH and Pentest Plus Learning Paths and InfoSec Skills in those boot camps, but is there anything else you want to say about the different certifications, or are those the primary two that you recommend?
Yeah, definitely Pentest Plus and CEH are kind of the leaders, the kings of the hill, mind you, for pen testing certifications. There are other more advanced ones like the OSCP and some others that you move into afterwards, but definitely the CEH and Pentest Plus are kind of like the ones that I think are the perfect mixture of introduction types of information and actual hands-on pen testing skills that you learn in those courses. So those two are great as a person, for someone to enter into the field.
Yeah, and then the last question here, Cynthia's asking about if you're seeing more purple teams in your profession. So I think that's a good way to wrap up. Like once you get into pen testing, you talked a little bit how there's different routes, but are you pretty much like only doing blue team or only doing red team, or is there roles where you're kind of doing a little bit of everything?
I mean, there are purple teams, but it's one of those things where people are spending a lot of time doing offensive things like pen testing, or they're spending a lot of time doing defensive things like blue teaming and cybersecurity engineering. So there's definitely purple teams that are standing up out there, but it has not reached the prominence of being red or blue yet.
All right. Well, with that, I think we are out of time, so we will go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and a huge thank you to Keatron for sharing his expertise today. We'll be doing webinars with Keatron once every quarter. I think our next webinar is scheduled for March, where we're going to talk about getting into cybersecurity and kind of all the entry-level stuff again, so that'll be a lot of fun. As we wrap up, there's going to be a short survey that will appear, and we'd greatly appreciate if you take a moment just to give us your thoughts so we know what kind of content you're looking for us to talk about next. Lastly, if you have any questions about ethical hacking or any other training, please reach out to InfoSec. We'd be happy to answer your questions. Thanks again, Keatron, and thanks, everyone. Talk to you later.
Thank you.